This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Patterson and Michael Remis.
Hey now, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk. It is a Thursday, September 26th. Michael Remis in the host chair for Hustler, who's at the President's Cup. President's, no apostrophe in that. I just looked that up. He's going to hop in just a second, talk about what's been going on there in Montreal. But so fired up to be here. The Winnipeg Jets winning, dominant 6-1 preseason win last night against the Edmonton Oilers. We will get the Edmonton perspective from Tom Gazzola. The Edmonton 0-3 in the preseason. We will talk more Jets. Ken Wiebe hopping on. He's at Hockey for All Center. Brandon Rewucki. A lot of Jets news this weekend. The Bombers, they're preparing for the Edmonton Elks. The rematch, the highest rated game on TSN last weekend, goes again tomorrow night, Princess Auto Stadium. And if tomorrow night is anything like last night, should be a beautiful night, beautiful weather as well. So I can't wait for that. Bombers trying to get back to the postseason. They can punch their ticket with a win. And who would have thought that after they started 0-4? But we're going to get to Hustler. We got clips, a lot of stuff on last night's game. Got to give a shout out to all of the sponsors: Consolidated Supply, Rollies Transfer, Manitoba Battery, Canadian Club, Wallace & Wallace, F Apparel, Princess Auto, Little Brown Jug, Royal Sports, Boston Pizza, Winnipeg Jets. And the Winnipeg Jets did give us a special offer for the home opener. That is not this Friday, but next Friday, the 11th. So check the link in the description of this video for a special offer on tickets for that. Garage Living, CFL 110. That just came out earlier this week. Hustler and Jeff in deep on all the topics of CFL 110. And Coolbet, we'll be going through the Coolbet lines. Connor and I went over some season-long stuff for the NHL, but Thursday night football kicks off. Okay, it's time. Bring in Hustler. He posted a beautiful picture in Montreal. We've tested it out. He is ready to go. So I'll put you in the host side and let me unmute you. I think you're good to go. What's going on?
What's going on is we made it to Montreal and the sun's come out. It was gnarly this morning. Pouring rain all last night and all this morning. But as you can see behind me, it is absolutely glorious right now. And the USA and the international teams are taking on Royal Montreal in the first round of four-ball play here at the President's Cup. An absolutely beautiful, beautiful course. And despite all the rain, it's actually dried up pretty well. But honestly, this is it's just so cool to be here. I mean, longtime listeners know I've done a couple of the Ryder Cups. The fact that this is on Canadian soil, with three Canadians playing, and of course a good friend of our program and many people in Winnipeg native Ryan Hart, the executive director of the tournament, seen quite a few locals, at least locals from our neck of the woods, out here as well. So a great start to the event. About an hour ago, the Americans were up in 4 of the 5 matches, and that would have been a bit of a bummer to get going. Similar to the Ryder Cup at Whistling Straits, where the Yanks just ran away with it. Corey Connor's playing really well. I mean, they've got a point on not on the board, but are leading right now. So it's tight, and the back nine should be really, really fun. So, obviously I'll try and pop in at some point tomorrow as well. I'll throw out some content on the socials at Hustlerama. Certainly for at Sports Talk WPG, send some stuff over as well. But I know, Remo, you have a lot to get to today because we had a hockey game last night. Not to mention, you were part of the, what do we call this? The influencer tour of the rink. I was disappointed to miss this Last year, we got to try all the food there. But I imagine that the big things this year were the new sound system, a few treats that'll be happening on, and maybe a quicker way to get into the building as well. But outside of all that, which we'll find out when we get to the rink throughout the regular season, Jets put a bit of a whooping on an Oiler team, although I did look at the lineup of what Edmonton sent here. Bit of a mismatch, but at the same time, that's what you should be doing when you're playing at home against a very, very undermanned lineup, is take care of business. And it seemed like the Jets certainly did that, led by a big night for Neil Pionk with 4 points.
He had Neil Pionk, 4 points. Oh my God. What a game for him on defense. 1 goal, 3 assists, scoring a beauty on the power play pass from Rasmus Kupari. But yeah, I mean, you look at the Edmonton lineup and reminiscent of a Bakersfield Condors lineup. There's not a lot of players in there, maybe like 4 or 5 who had regular shifts in the NHL. I know they have like veteran rules, but it seems, I don't know, they didn't send McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman, Nurse, Bouchard. We didn't see Jeff Skinner, Arvidsson. They did send their starting goalie, Stuart Skinner, and I actually felt bad for him just getting shellacked. And yeah, the Jets took care of business. They played a lot of their veterans, but that's what we want to see. Kyle Connor, highlight reel, breakaway goal, the leg kick, backhand, 5-hole, beautiful deke. And Brad Lambert playing with Nikolai Ehlers and Vladislav Nemestikov. Nemestikov and Ehlers showing off some great chemistry on a goal. Colin Miller getting in on third pair D, making everyone say, why didn't he play last year? He had 1 goal, 1 assist. And Capo Kakin, and I think a lot of focus on him, Huss, after that first game where he let in a couple he should have had back. But if you're looking over the goaltending power play, I think he's back in the driver's seat. You want me to get in the arena, or do you want to respond to the game here?
Well, yeah, let's just quickly talk about the game last night. And obviously, I wasn't able to see it, but I was sort of following along with everything that happened. Great to see Brad Lambert with another strong performance. And listen, before everybody freaks out, I've already seen this happening on social media today. Brad Lambert in the B group today, and there's been some speculation. I think we need to wait to hear from Scott Arniel, hear what the plan is for the next preseason game. Because I don't think Brad Lambert did anything last night from everything that I've taken in that would have moved him back as far as challenging for a spot on the team right now. Coach did say he wanted to see Nemestikov in that spot. I'm sure that will be the case potentially for this next run, or at least in practice today. But hold your horses on everything about one simple move from a training camp group, and that being that he's on the first trip to Manitoba Boost Camp right now. I mean, I think Brad Lambert's been one of the great stories of camp so far, and I think a lot of people, including people inside that Jets coaching staff, are looking forward to seeing him get a little bit more of a run. So I would expect that to happen, but it might mean a little bit more preseason action, which might mean a switch from a group for the time being. But I'm looking forward to seeing Cole Perfetti get into action. Of course, Cole Perfetti was skating back with the big group, in the top 6. He'll be there right now. And I mean, listen, as Cole kind of catches up and gets back into the mix, that will change things a little bit. But certainly doesn't sound like Brad Lambert did himself any disservice last night with his performance last night. So I will choose not to read too much into it until we hear a little bit more from the coach and see how things play out over the course of the next few days at camp, and of course the upcoming preseason games.
Yeah, we'll have to see what happens. We're waiting to hear Coach, scheduled to talk around 2:30 near the end of the show after Ken hops on. So at the end, there'll be some injury updates. We showed the lineup yesterday. Logan Stanley was supposed to play, was a late scratch, and wasn't listed on either group. They really didn't have any update after the game. Maybe we'll hear more. Today was Simon Lundmark getting in, and yeah, they put out the groups today. Group A was basically the NHL group. Group B had Milic, DeVincentis, Lundmark, Kuzman, Bauer, and 9 forwards, including Toninato, Shaw, Torgerson, Barlow, Axel, Parker Ford, Chibrikov, and Lambert. And will we see, was Lambert the placeholder for what we'll see on opening night with Ehlers, Nemestikov, and Perfetti? We'll wait and see. Lambert recording 1 goal, 1 assist, a nice snipe there over that went through Colin Delia, as the Jets really, I don't know, six. It was a 6-1 preseason game. I joked about Paul Maurice's quote, "We were lucky to be in the building with them tonight." I don't think the Jets were quite putting out their first power play at the end, but there was a lot of talk about the power play, and they went 2 for 3 on the power play. Edmonton went 0 for 5 on theirs, so it was definitely what you wanted to see from them. And you can only control, the opponent that's put in front of you. And again, if they did lose, and let's say Edmonton somehow won, we would probably be losing our minds right now. So they took care of business, move on. We'll see what happens on Friday's game in Minnesota.
Yeah, and I'll just remind everybody that last year this team started with Cole Perfetti in the center position. And then, when things weren't working well, particularly in that Vegas game, if I recall correctly, they pivoted and moved to Vlad Nemetsnikov, and, he stayed there for a good period of time. I still think it's very much on the table to give Brad Lambert a run in the first few games of the regular season. Nothing is set in stone right now. Far from it right now. They still have more preseason games. They've still got more action, and they've still got a couple weeks before the season starts. So I think there still is work to be done. By the way, look at this. Working hard. There it is, live in person. Ryan Hart, executive director. Proud of the peg, doing his thing. But yeah, listen, I think there's still a lot of time left for jobs. And when I say jobs to be earned, I mean, let's be real here. We kind of have a pretty good idea of just about everyone that's going to be on the roster. And I think it's even more certain, especially with the blue line, with Ville Heinola being on the IR. And I guess the big question is what is up with Logan Stanley? If he's out for a significant period of time, does that mean Coghlan and Fleury start? Is there another player that might move into the mix? I think it's probably the former. But I know that Brad Lambert is the talk of the town right now with where he fits in, and there was a lot of concern right now. Hold your horses. Let's hear from Arnie. Brad Lambert's going to get in some other preseason games. He's acquitted himself very well. And, I hope we see a little bit more of what we've seen a little early on, and that's Brad playing in the middle with the likes of a Nikolai Ehlers, a Cole Perfetti, a Vlad Nemetsnikov. I think, listen, it's quite clear, though, with Brad's in that top 6 and playing center on that second line, that probably means Vlad is moving down to somewhere in the bottom 6 right now, as he did routinely last year. So some intrigue coming out of the day-to-day grind of practice right now, a training camp for the Winnipeg Jets, and, of course, a good performance last night. Take it for what you will based on who was in town. But to your point, Remis, if they didn't perform the way they did last night and, squeak one out in OT or lost, people would be freaking out right now. So you take advantage of that time, work on the power play, which they did in the game last night, get a win and move on to the next one. Much like I'm going to be moving on to the next one, get out and check out this back nine this afternoon. I know you got a big show, and Ken is coming up. I'm going to be very interested to see what Ken has to say on just, his takeaways from last night's game, as well as if there is anything to be taken from how the groups look, what that means for the next preseason game, but big picture, what that looks for Brad Lambert's quest to be a member of the Winnipeg Jets when the puck drops on October 9th, and then lock that spot down as we get into it. And as far as the President's Cup goes, it's on the tube right now. You can flick that on while you're listening to Winnipeg Sports Talk, or check that out later. I'll be back here tomorrow and throughout the weekend, throwing up some content on the socials and throwing some vids back for Winnipeg Sports Talk. So, Remo, appreciate you doing your thing. I know you and Connor will take it tomorrow, but try and pop in at some point. But otherwise, say what's up to the fellas. Thanks to everyone for jumping on, and we'll look forward to catching up later on through the President's Cup from Montreal, and then back in Winnipeg next week.
Yeah, thanks so much, Huss, for coming on. Looking good, sounding good. That's that new iPhone 16
New
Pro. iPhone 16. It's got the USB-C at the bottom, no longer lighting. Brand spanking new. Way to go. Thanks again.
All right, have a great show. We'll talk to you guys later and tomorrow.
There he is. There he is, Andrew Hustler Patterson, live in Montreal at the President's Cup. He told me Wayne Gretzky was there listening off the golfers, Nick Suzuki, George St. Pierre, bringing out all the stars there at Royal Montreal. And a lot of talk, talking about special teams this week. You got the new power play, new penalty kill coach here, Scott Arniel, after the game. Successful night for the Jets. I mentioned did not allow a power play goal and scored 2 on their 3 opportunities. Here's Scott Arniel on special teams.
There's lots of things kind of sitting in the meetings, listening to Davis talk on the power play, kind of emphasizing some areas that he wanted them to focus on tonight. I thought there was a lot of good things there. There's some things that he's already talked that he wants to improve on. PK, same thing. I like to sort of work in tandem as 4. There was some really good pressure. Gave up a couple of looks in the middle of the ice that that Dean wants to talk to him about. But all in all, I think after what we did yesterday and kind of for the first time throwing it in live, there was lots of positive.
Hustler is gone, but you couldn't hear me on mute counting down the number of seconds left in this clip to myself like I normally do with him. There's Scott Arniel. We'll see how the power play goes. We talked yesterday with Murat, if you can squeeze a couple goals from the power play, score, allow fewer on the penalty kill, go from bottom 3rd in the league, can certainly help you gain a few additional standings points. I did mention the shorthanded goals. The Jets were at the bottom of the league. Adam Lowry swiping a puck and putting one on the wraparound. That was a preseason goal. If I've ever seen one, Brad Lambert, the man of the hour or the man of the preseason, 1 goal, 1 assist. I joked yesterday's show. Parker Ford was the darling of preseason last year. It's Brad Lambert, who's now skating on Group B. One player I didn't mention on Group B before, Braden Yeager, is still with the Jets on Group B. But here's Arniel and what he saw from Brad Lambert yesterday.
Oh, it was good. That line was good. I mean, they, we wanted to see kind of him playing with that speed and with Oilers' speed, and then just kind of seeing how he was going to do without the puck, and that's really what he's going to kind of continue to have to do. He's going to go play Friday, and he's going to see it again, and we'll probably see a little bit heavier lineup in Minnesota. So every time he steps on the ice, it's a learning curve for him, and I really liked a lot of what he did. And he when he has the puck, he can be dynamic with it. And he, again, like I mentioned the other day, that there's things that he continue without the puck that he's learning every time he's out there. And this was another step for him.
Brad Lambert, no concerns with him with the puck. You see the speed, you see the skill, maybe working on some of that two-way game. And you do wonder, there were a couple times last night he seemed to get pushed off the puck a little easily, but hey, can't argue with the results. 1 goal, 1 assist in a game that the Jets should win, and we're waiting and seeing what the roster is for Friday's game in Minnesota. Lambert on a line with Nemestikov and Ehlers, and beautiful setup from Nemestikov dropping to the, passing it into the slot for Ehlers, wired one home past Stuart Skinner for the Jets' first goal of the game, and they took it from there with the 6-1 win, out shooting Edmonton 37-27. More from Scott Arniel after the game. Seems to be a little competition for that 4th line. It's been David Gustafsson the last couple of years. Rasmus Kupari was on the 4th line as well, but he was kind of in and out of the lineup with injury. Here's Scott Arniel talking about the competition for 4th line center between those two players, and wants to see a bit more of what Rasmus Kupari brings to the lineup.
I mean, we tried to make anytime there was D-zone draws, Gus was taking him on the left side, Coop was taking him on the right. They both, we used Gus lots last year on the left side. Coop is one guy that hasn't got a lot of reps in the middle of the ice. He obviously injuries, and then being the kind of the 13th forward last year, he's another guy that I'm trying to ramp up his minutes. I want to see him play. I really want to see if he's our 4th line centerman. I know what Gus can do. I'm not taken away from Gus at all, but I know what he can do. I really want to see Coop, and Coop's going to go back in on Friday, and I want to see this kid play. He hasn't played a lot for us, and I want to see what he can do as well.
There's Scott Arniel. Wants to see more of Rasmus Kupari. For a long stretch of the season, had the highest recorded top speed. Maybe they can make something work with that. And hey, still hasn't scored a goal in a Jets uniform in an NHL regular season game. Maybe that'll be coming, and you can keep that puck and have it as a souvenir. One player, big game from Neil Pionk, and this is a big year for him. Battled injuries, some personal stuff the last couple of years. He is entering the year in the final year of his deal. He wants to have a good year, and he had a big offseason welcoming a child into the world. Here's Arniel Pionk, who yesterday had 1 goal, assisted by Rasmus Kupari, and 3 assists. Here's Winnipeg Jets head coach Scott Arniel.
You know, he's feeling really good about himself coming into this camp. One thing he gets overlooked, that was a pretty personal thing that happened to him over the course of last year with losing his best friend, and it hit him maybe a little harder than people thought. And it was an interesting. He had a summer where he got to spend a lot of time with the Johnson family, his wife. So he's now in a better place, and you know, he's pretty excited about this year. He really wants to step out and really come back and be the player that he was here a couple of years ago. I got a lot of time for Neil. We go back to New York, and he's a guy to me that just cares about being a Winnipeg Jet. He loves playing here. He's extremely popular with his teammates, and that was a really good first step for him.
And what does it say about the guy when he's joking with us? It was a blind squirrel finds a nut moment.
That's him. I mean, he's never going to take credit for anything. He's a team first kind of guy.
Scott Arniel on Neil Pionk, second pair D for the Winnipeg Jets, entering the final year of his deal. Bit of a down year last year. Did play in all 82. Maybe had struggled certainly in the playoffs as well. He had that big season 19-20 where he had a career high 45 points in 71 games. Even in 2021, 32 and 54. The last 2 years equaled 33 points. You mentioned, he said he had a foot injury, or Kevin Cheveldayoff mentioned that in an interview with Thomas Drance. Pionk hasn't really revealed a lot of the injury stuff that's gone on with him. A lot of it has been speculated, but Kevin Cheveldayoff did say in The Athletic, an article with Thomas Drance, or interview with him, that he did suffer, through a foot injury. And again, looking to have a big year, contract year. It's going to be big. 33 points the last year. Might get some power play 2-time. We saw that yesterday. Him and Colin Miller, paired together on that. Here, speaking of Neil Pionk, first star last night. What do you do if you're the Winnipeg Jets and you're playing against a lineup that, isn't exactly full of NHL talent? Here's what Neil Pionk had to say after last night's win.
It's all about good habits. I think Arnie preached that before the game, after the game, during the game. So it doesn't matter who you're playing in preseason, roster-wise, doesn't matter who you're playing with. Got to create good habits and get into shape for the year. Yeah, it was good. It was good. I like our shot mentality, too. We made one play, and Millsy shot the puck, and made another play, and Lambeau shot the puck. So not only that, the first group had a bunch of opportunities as well. So I thought, for the most part, it was pretty clean.
There's Neil Pionk. We'll get more on the game. Brandon Rewucki joining us. Oh, I was muted there. Yeah, you guys didn't miss anything. That's fine. Brandon Rewucki coming up. Talk more on last night's game. But first, here's a couple messages from us. Here he is.
But as I said, if you missed it yesterday, normally we do CFL 110 on Wednesdays. We did it early this year, folks. We did it for our friends at Garage Living Winnipeg on Monday because Jeff Hamilton is away, and I am going to be away tomorrow. So check that out wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can search CFL 110, and it's up right now on the Winnipeg Sports Talk YouTube channel. A big thanks to Garage Living Winnipeg for their support. Guys, we're into fall. The push is on. If you want to have a clean, organized garage this fall before the snow flies, give Garage Living Winnipeg a call at 999-1234. Pat's been getting lots of calls. As soon as back to school hit, people are suddenly seeing all the bikes, hockey, and football equipment, you name it, strewn all over the garage.
Garage Living has an innovative solution called Slatwall. Dozens of hooks, baskets, and shelves that clip into it to get everything off your floor. There's even a cool golf club caddy and tire racks to store those winter tires. And the cool thing is you can do as much or as little of it as you want to fit in within your budget. This is your chance to clear the clutter, organize and beautify your garage with Slatwall, as well as beautiful polyaspartic floor coating and made in Canada premium metal cabinetry for a total garage makeover. Check out their website at garageliving.com. All their great work's shown there. And give our pal Pat Kanuga a buzz, 204-999-1234 to book a free in-garage consultation or make an appointment to meet him at their showroom at 981 Main Street. Garage Living Winnipeg. Garage is made for living. CFL 110 up right now on the WST YouTube channel. If you and your family have a move coming up in the next few months, or really any time, give our pals at Rolly's Transfer a call for the white glove treatment from the most trusted name in moving in Manitoba for over 60 years. Rolly has an extensive logistics business that takes them throughout the city and province on a daily basis, which means flexible timing, flexible routes, and great prices on that move. And you can get an even better price on that move being a WST listener. Check out their great website, Rollies.com. Top right corner, there is a request an estimate button. Click on that. Let them know when you're moving, where you're moving, and what you're moving. And make sure to put in WST in the promo code for a special discount for WST listeners on moving services and moving supplies. For your next move, make it Rollies, the most trusted name in moving in Manitoba, family owned for over 60 years. Find out more or request an estimate today at Rollies.com.
There's Hasse. We heard from him before. He is in Montreal at the President's Cup. I do have some Jets lines from the first practice group. Thank you to Murat for tweeting them out. We got Connor, Shafley, Valardi, Perfetti, Nemesnikov, Ehlers, Niederreiter, Lowry, Appleton with Jared Anderson, Dolan rotating in. Jad. Get ready to see a lot of Jad possibly this season. That's his initials. Iafallo, Kupari, Barron with Gustafson rotating in. D pairings are Morrissey, DeMello, Pionk, Lundmark, Fleury, Miller, Salomonson, and Coughlin. Says he doesn't see Dylan Sandberg and Logan Stanley. We're going to hear an update. He was not listed on either of the groups and was a late scratch for the game. Brad Lambert, the man of the preseason, skating at noon. All right, it's time to bring in Brandon Rewucki, Skates and Plates podcast. Brandon, young dad, what's going on?
Just a couple of young dads talking a little puck. I'm doing good, man. I was actually watching some of the President's Cup this afternoon. It didn't get a chance to see Huss in all his glory there, but afternoon golf, always a nice way to get a Thursday going.
Yeah, no apostrophe on President's Cup. I just discovered that. I got to look into that. I thought it was like the President's, his cup, but it's just like any generic President's Cup. Anyway, yeah. This isn't Winnipeg grammar talk. Winnipeg Sports Talk. If you're watching this now, feel free, hit the thumbs up, hit the like button, subscribe to our channel. Tells YouTube we're putting out some great content talking about grammar here, but let's talk about more what people want to touch on. I mean, I've kind of gone into the Perfetti contract if you want to touch on it quickly. I know you did a podcast on it. No surprise there with the number that came out, but an opportunity for him to carve out a bigger role on this team and earn a bigger contract for the next one.
Yeah, I was actually kind of surprised that the number was, I guess, as low as it came out to. I thought ultimately we would see it a little bit closer to the Shane Pinto 3.75. But I mean, still in the ballpark. I probably echo a lot of fans, maybe frustrations about this in that why wasn't this a deal that got done 2-3 weeks ago as opposed to missing a couple days of training camp? But nonetheless, I mean, I think it was important to get this one wrapped up before the Friday game, just because this gives Perfetti a little bit of a chance to kind of get his feet under him I mean, you see when some of these negotiations drag on closer to the end of the preseason, you want to have all your guys, especially your young guys, ready to go by the start of game one and put them in the right spot to succeed. So I think that part of it is good that Perfetti is locked in and ready to go. I'm a little intrigued that by all accounts the Jets didn't really entertain any kind of a long-term contract for, by all accounts, a young guy that wants to be here long-term. So I think it's pretty evident reading between the lines in how these negotiations went, and the number being a little bit lower, that, you know, the Jets, not that they don't believe in him, but they would just like to see a little more evidence laid out in front of them before committing to 5, 6, 7 years. But important, Perfetti's on line 2 to start the season. And he said all the right things. He's done everything right, since going on the media tour, being unsigned. And now it's on him to basically say, you didn't want to give me 6 years now? Well, I'll make you pay for it a couple years down the line. And that would be a very good problem for the Jets to have. So that's going to be where the intrigue lies, is to see, can we get first half Cole Perfetti for all 82 games this season? Because the start was great, tapered off quite a bit by the time the playoffs rolled around. And if we could get, 70 plus games of that first half Perfetti, then yes, the Jets will be forking over a big payday in a couple years' time, but that's all right.
Yeah, I talked about this with Murat, saying, hey, they would be happy to pay him more money if he, shows the next 2 seasons that he earns it. A guy he may or may not be playing with on Friday, Brad Lambert, we're all talking about him, a 1 goal, 1 assist, former first-round pick. Was on Group B today after a great game last night. Surprising to see, but do you see a spot for Brad Lambert on this roster? I don't see too many open holes, and ultimately will just be the easier option for a guy who doesn't require waivers to be sent down and start the season with the Manitoba Moose.
Yeah, I mean, I think the writing's on the wall when you have a clear NHL group hit the ice for camp today, and then, 10, 12 or so players that are destined to probably start the year with the Moose or in juniors. So I think it's evident that the Jets are going to slow play Brad Lambert this year. Do I agree with it? It kind of depends, right? Like, I mean, there's no doubt about it that Brad Lambert, in terms of ceiling, would give the Jets like the highest ceiling as a team if he got the nod at second line center this year. But there's going to be a fair amount of growing pains that go along with it, right? Whereas Vladdy gives you a nice solid floor where you can depend on that second line and they'll be able to contribute. It's a little bit more of an unknown with Lambert at this stage. I think he's been decent in preseason. He hasn't been as eye-opening and as many wow plays as we saw last year, albeit in a different position with him down the middle there. I haven't seen anything that would suggest, wow, he's really not ready for it. But I guess to the team side of things, it's not like he's banged the door down and made this as obvious as possible that he's completely ready to go right from game one here. If I was kind of rejigging the lines here, I personally would be willing to give Lambert a bit of rope to start the year, knowing that you have Vladdy as kind of that, safety valve, that if it doesn't work and he needs a little bit more time, then Vladdy can come in and he's as reliable and as dependable as it comes on this team in terms of filling in that second line role. But I'd be really intrigued, and I would kind of go out of my way at this point to see, okay, what exactly do we have in Lambert down the middle? Because ultimately it's about finding out the best 12 forwards by the time the playoffs roll around. I would like to see him make mistakes, gain experience at the NHL level, because I don't know how much more there is for him to learn at the AHL at this point. The Jets obviously see things differently, and they're going to slow play both him and Chibrikov. But, like we saw with Kyle Connor a few years back, might spend a couple weeks down in the AHL and then, gets the call up and we never see him again play for the Moose after that. So I don't know. When I look at the situation, I would say kind of slightly disappointing in that the Jets didn't maybe not necessarily go out of their way to open a spot for a youngster, but give them a little bit more leeway, right? And I know there's still 3 more games left in the preseason for the club, but it seems pretty evident at this point that, like you touched on, there's no real openings. There's no real spots for any of these guys to jump in. I honestly might be a little more upset that they're giving Jared Anderson-Dolan more of a run than Nikita Chibrikov in the bottom 6. because how old is Anderson Dolan at this point? 25, 26? Like, you kind of know what you have in him. I love Chibrakov's game every time he gets out there. Like, I think he's ready-made to be an impact player in the bottom six for Winnipeg. So I would have liked to have seen, honestly, if you asked me who I would have liked to have seen given more time and a bigger role in the preseason, it might be Chibrikov on either line 3 or line 4.
Again, Murad, I said the lines Murad posted this morning at 11:17 a.m. And it seems like we're kind of headed towards these being lines, not Simon Lundmark. That's Sandberg would be there. We're waiting on injury updates. But do you think that there's just a fundamental flaw with the way the Jets do their lines? Like, oh, Lambert, if he's not playing in the top 6, well, then he can't make the roster. Like, why not go with a fourth line, maybe put Lambert on the second line, Nemesnikov on the fourth line, and give them more ice time? Because right now, they're middle of the pack last year in goals for, and you're getting zero offensive contribution from your bottom 2 lines, the way they're constructed. Now, that third line, they don't allow any goals either. So I think that is a net positive. But maybe you would get more scoring if you did, or maybe scoring doesn't matter to them when you have a Vezina caliber goalie. I don't know where you stand on, trying to make all these guys fit in and saying, oh, if, the reason why they didn't play Perfetti last year, well, he wasn't great in the second half, but like, oh, he had to be in the top 6. Well, why not have, try to create another scoring line? Again, where do you stand on that?
Yeah, it's a really, really interesting topic and discussion, because it's pretty evident that, it's a top, the progressive, I guess, or the more modern approach is a top 9 as opposed to a top 6, bottom 6, right? Like, you need 3 lines that are going to be able to contribute and score consistently for you. And we see that across the league. And that's, I would argue that's probably the more successful way to go about it. But it also doesn't mean that you can't have a designated checking line as your third line, which then opens up more opportunities for your top 6. And, to be fair, as much as people might not like it and it might not be, aesthetically pleasing to a degree, the Lowry Appleton Niederreiter line, they killed it last year. Like, they faced tough competition night in, night out, home and away, and they won those minutes. It wasn't, maybe an overwhelming, goal differential victory by the trio, but they outperformed whoever they went up against night in, night out. And so I can understand the thought process there being, if we have a third line that's one of the better checking groups in the league and they can eat a lot of those tough minutes, it is going to give our top guys a little more freedom, a little more advantageous opportunities, and we can maybe make up the difference that way. I don't have a problem with that. The other issue, though, is that the top line that we're seeing being reunited right now, in that, Connor Scheifele, Valardi appear to be getting the first start out of the gate to start the season. And through 27 games last year, they were outchanced, outshot, outscored. So it does feel like it's a little counterintuitive in that we're going to go with a third checking line that's, basically going to slightly come out on top to give our top guys more of an opportunity. But then you're not totally prioritizing and optimizing your top 6, right? So I don't know if the answer, Remo, is, with the personnel the Jets have. I don't know if there's a right or a wrong answer. Like, should they go with what they went with last year, or should they try a more modern approach and, create things where it's similar to what the Florida Panthers threw out last year? And then the Panthers are kind of an interesting comparison, especially with Paul Maurice being there. But, you wonder if maybe they wanted to opt for a more modern approach. Putting Brad Lambert as your quote-unquote third-line center would fill the Anton Lundell role out there in Florida. And then you can maybe give Adam Lowry some more high-end offensive wingers to work with, and maybe he's able to showcase an offensive side of his game that you haven't seen before. If you ask me which route I would prefer, I probably would lean a little bit more towards, let's try to create 3 scoring lines, and see if we can beat the opposition in that sense. But I also don't think that the route they're taking right now is destined to fail. I just don't like the way that they've optimized the top line right now to go along with Lowry as their designated checking line.
Yeah, just looking at Money Puck, you can go lines. This is a fun tool. Sort by Winnipeg Jets, offensive lines. I mean, as you said, the Alberton, Lowry, Nino line absolutely killed it. 23 goals for, 15 against, and 72 games together. By far, I mean, that's double the length of time any other line spent together. And there you have the Connor, Treyfle, Valardi line scoring 11 goals and 20 games and being on the ice for 13 against at 5-on-5. Not an ideal setup when your top line is allowing more than they're scoring, but they're going to rock with that. They like Scott Arniel saying after the game, they like the possession that they have, and maybe with more time, things will even out. Something to watch for going forward. We haven't really talked about defense at all, and we were given that blow last week. Ville Heinola out for, a long period of time with an infection in his surgically repaired ankle. There are already some questions, I think, on who's going to replace Brandon Dillon if Sandberg can't do that. How do you see this defense, behind, you got Morrissey, DeMello, and Pionk and Sandberg, but after that, a couple question marks. Colin Miller, scoring yesterday, I think he's put his name in, but what do you see from the Jets defense moving forward here as the preseason continues?
Yeah, I would say when it comes, first off, I know he's not going to make the team, but I thought Lundmark looked really good last night. I haven't seen a lot of Moose action over the last year or so, but he's a good skater. He was playing his offside too, I think. I'm kind of intrigued to keep an eye on him as maybe a potential depth blue liner for the Jets at some point in the near future. But he's a pretty smooth skater back there. I would say as the blue line as a whole, though, it currently has the biggest question mark or hole on this roster, and that's the second pair. They're just putting a lot of faith in both Neil Pionk to recapture his form from a few years back, or to avoid the injury bug that's plagued him over the last couple of years, and then that Dylan Sandberg can ably fill the skates of Brandon Dillon. There's a lot into that, and especially with Heinola being out now, there's a decent chance that they're playing 20, 21, 22 minutes a night. You need them to kill that on the second pair to match what you did last year in terms of, like you said, at least team defensive wise, giving up the fewest goals in the NHL last season. So I don't have the same amount of belief that the team does in what they're throwing out there for the second pair at this moment. From Neil Pionk's side of things, I think it is fair to say that, and Chevy mentioned that in his article in The Athletic with Drance, that, the foot injuries and some other injuries that have crept up on Neil Pionk over the last couple of years have plagued him. And that's where we've seen the up and down level of play from him. But injuries are a part of the game too, and then you've got to find a way to avoid them. If it's that much of a hindrance to Pionk's game, then he's going to have to find a way to stay healthy for the majority of the 82 games. So I don't think it's outlandish to say that as Pionk Sandberg goes, the Jets go. If they're able to replicate what they got at times from Pionk and Dillon at their best last season, then this is going to be a comfortable playoff team. If they aren't able to deliver that on a night in, night out basis, then you have to wonder how aggressive does Chevy need to be to find some external reinforcements to come in and fill that role. On top of that, hopefully, we don't really know yet, but hopefully Ville's sideline absence isn't going to be as long, because I would love to see him get a run with Colin Miller. I think that has the potential to be a really, really great third pairing for the Jets, and maybe even more if they're able to play up to what I think they're capable of. So early injuries already in camp are kind of, putting a dent into that plan already. But I would also say, he's one of the healthy ones, knock on wood, but don't completely discount Colin Miller having a really big impact for the team this year. And I think, he hasn't gotten onto the ice in a ton of Jets action since he was acquired last year. But everything that I've seen from him since he steps onto the ice is I think he's got a lot more to offer than some people might expect. So we'll see. But there's no doubt that the second pair is going to be, maybe the pivot point as to how successful the Jets ultimately are going to be this upcoming season.
Yeah, that's certainly an interesting point to make. We're going to get some more updates from Ken. You referenced that article in The Athletic. Thomas Drance talking with Jets GM Kevin Cheveldayoff at the Young Stars in Penticton. Cheveldayoff revealing that 2 years ago, Pionk played with a broken foot for almost the entire year. These are things nobody knows. He doesn't tell you. He just goes out there and puts his heart on the line. And Scott Arniel saying after the game yesterday that, how much it affected him going through the death of his best friend, Adam Johnson. And yeah, just a rough situation. And seems like Neil Pionk is ready to have a rebound. We have been saying that for a couple of years, but in a contract year, big year for him. So, Brandon, thanks for hopping on. I'm going to get to Ken in a sec. Appreciate it, and look forward to connecting again next week.
Yeah, no worries. Sounds good, my man. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks, you too. There he is, Brandon Rewucki. He's on X, formerly known as Twitter, Brandon_Rewucki. Check him out. Skates and plates, when you're searching for it, it's the AN symbol, not skates, AND plates, but that symbol where you hold shift and hit 7, it comes up. We're going to talk to Ken Wiebe. He's at Hockey for All Center. He's got the updates on the Jets skates, the groups, Group A, Group B, lines, last night's game. Going to go through all of it. But first, here's Huss.
Looks like we're going to have some beautiful weather coming in for the remainder of September for the most part. Might be time to get a few more projects done or maybe even started. Heck, our friends at Consolidated Supply can help you with so much. You really have to pop in and see them at their showroom at 1395 Niagara to see it, to believe it. But, I mean, where do we start? They're the leaders in irrigation solutions and systems. Had a big start to the year considering how wet our May and June was. But so much more than that, artificial turf. You want that dream putting green in the backyard? They can make that happen. Something inside, no problem. Golf carts, the exclusive club car dealer in Manitoba, both new and used, as well as other innovative vehicles from Club Car with industrial usage. And then other great options for your property like hot tubs and amazing outdoor kitchens. They're also the leaders in small engine parts and repair. Get on down and see Consolidated Supply at their showroom, open to the public, 1395 Niagara Road East, or find out more online at cte.ca. And before we bring in Pagnotta, a huge shout out to our friends at Manitoba Battery. Batteries, we take them for granted at times, certainly in the winter. But when your truck won't start, who are you to call? And that, of course, is Manitoba Battery. Now, Manitoba Battery has batteries for literally everything. They've been powering boats and campers and ATVs and all the fun stuff this summer. But very soon it's going to be getting down to business for another Manitoba winter. For all of your battery needs, make sure you're prepared and do it locally and get the best prices in town. Manitoba Battery, beating the pants off the big box stores on price and with the best service as well. You can see them on Logan Avenue or on Dover Court at either of their two locations, or you can give them a call or order online, and Manitoba Battery will deliver those batteries to you for free anywhere inside the perimeter with any purchase over $60. It is just that easy. Shop local. They'll bring it to you. Order online today at manitobabattery.com.
There's us. That was recorded last week. Not hopping on with David Pagnotta the fourth period. It is Ken Wiebe live at the Hockey for All Center at the Jets skate. Group A, Group B. They're going on. Ken, what's happening over there?
Remo, group 2 is flowing around here. Colby Barlow just went bar down on Thomas Milich. So we've got the live action here. Barlow and Lambert and Chibrikov together. So could be something that we see on Friday night in Minnesota. I think now that we know that it looks like Nemesnikov was with Ehlers and Perfetti this morning. So I know much to the chagrin of some of the folks on X, I think, based on my mentions. But again, that doesn't mean Lambert's out of the mix, folks. Still 3 games. Because Cole was out of camp, I think they just wanted to get that line with a little bit under their belt, get him a game on Friday, and then see how the last 2 games go. I think that's how I would assess the situation. But we know things are very calm and measured on the old Twitter machine.
I'm reading the headline here at the Free Press. You're calling Mike McIntyre's article Jets
Okay.
big win, 6-1 last night. Nothing to get worked up over. Is that why Lambert is on Group B today? Because they're not getting too worked up over his 1 goal, 1 assist performance.
Well, Remo, I just think again, don't get worked over today's groupings either. It's same premise here. So I thought there were some nice things from Brad Lambert yesterday for sure. Secondary assist on the Colin Miller goal and nice shot on the power play. Those were good things for him. I thought him and Nikolai Ehlers, they generated, their speed. They utilized it to their advantage on several occasions. I mean, was it bang bang on every shift? No, but I mean, we didn't expect it to be. So, progress. Brad Lambert is not in the risers and fallers. He's just, today is a different day. It was more of an full NHL skate this morning, with the exception of not seeing Dylan Sandberg or Logan Stanley out there. Simon Lundmark, who had a nice game the other day, he just filled in admirably on that second pairing. Lambert is going to get another opportunity to shine, I'm sure, before this is over. This doesn't mean he's destined for the American Hockey League or anything like that. It just was a 1 day's work here, and we'll see where they go from there. But I would say that he had a nice jump from game 1 to game 2, Remo. Don't you agree? I mean, he didn't pop, he didn't go crazy, but I thought he had a solid game against, most of the remnants of the Bakersfield Condors yesterday. So the biggest thing for Brad, and it's the same thing for every year that he's come to camp, he's had some shining moments early. But he needs to do it when the games are harder and when he's playing, more NHL competition and not going up against the likes of, Ty Emberson, Brett Kulak, and, Derek Ryan, and maybe one other guy who may or may not be on the Oilers this year, right? So he's off to a nice start. He's had NHL line mates in both games. Now, we'll see what tomorrow brings, but based on what we see with the second group, if this is a line, maybe it's Barlow and Lambert and Chibrikov on Friday against the Minnesota Wild. I think that would be a great opportunity for him as well. And Remo, as you know, if both Nemesnikov and Lambert are in the same game, maybe they flip-flop those guys at some point and give him another opportunity with Nikolai Ehlers. So, again, just like the Jets fans should not plan the parade, as Mike mentioned, based on a 6-1 win in a preseason game, they also should not be thinking that the camp is coming to an end for Brad Lambert because he's with the second group today. It's just one little impediment in the roadway here.
Yeah, we did see we'll talk about players who are guaranteed spots on the team. We did see a first look last night of the top line. Scheifele, Connor, Valardi kind of did what you would expect of them, controlled the puck. A really nice goal from Kyle Connor. I don't know if that was a new breakaway move or not with the leg kick, 5-hole backhand. But
5-hole, baby, look out. Backhand deke.
Nice start for those guys, seems like Scott Arniel is going to start with them as the top line, when puck drops next week. Or sorry, I guess 2 weeks, October, whenever that
Yeah, Remo, I mean,
is.
again, we know there's the whole sample size thing is only convenient when it's convenient, I guess. So, I mean, that line played, I think, 27 or 28 games together last year. We understand they were outscored at even strength, and their expected goals and shot share was not at the level that one would expect from a top line. But Scott Arniel talked about the importance of puck possession, and that's something that line is really good at. They were good at it against inferior competition, but if they want to stay together, they're going to have to put together some high results. They did a great job yesterday. Valardi had a ton of chances in the game. Scheifele was flying around. Kyle Connor looked like a guy who could easily be in the Rocket Richard Trophy considerations here as they move along, and I mean that's what you expect from them. I mean, Gabriel Valardi is an incredibly motivated player, Remo. I mean, he is a guy that I wrote about in the Free Press today. Much like you talked about with Neil Pionk being kind of a difference maker on that second pairing. If Gabriel Valardi plays, 72 to 80 games this year, or maybe even 82, the Jets are going to be in a better place. It's just that simple. I mean, this is a guy who, when he's in the lineup, is a dominant force. So I expect him to have a great year as long as he can stay healthy. And, that's always been the thing for him. But yeah, I mean, does that mean Nikolai Ehlers will never get a chance with the top line? Of course not. I mean, they're going to see how it goes, and then they're going to go from there. I mean, this is one thing that, everyone wants continuity and everything else. During the course of the year, different lines play together. Sometimes guys need a boost, or they need a break, or they need just a chance to play with someone else, and that's going to happen here too. I mean, Nikolai Ehlers is an important member of this hockey team for the Winnipeg Jets, and I think the most important thing for him is that he's starting on the top power play. He's going to be in that high slot position. And with that opportunity, he should have a chance to increase his minutes. And, with his increase in minutes should come an increase in production. Whether that translates into a chance with either Valardi and Scheifele or Connor and Scheifele, I mean, I expect those units to be tried at various points during the regular season as well. So, they got off to a nice start. Let's see what they do against, tougher competition. But yes, I would say that it's fair to say all signs have been pointing towards those guys starting the year together. But if they want to stay together, they can't be outscored, and they can't be outchanced on a regular basis. So I would also say that in the small sample size, that line had some good moments in the playoffs. So the other thing for me, I mean, they played 27-ish games together last year, and there were very few of those games, Remo, when all three players were healthy. I understand that the long history with Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor being outscored, I'm not ignoring that, but Gabriel Valardi does certain things along the wall and down low in the offensive zone that Nikolai Ehlers doesn't do. But Nikolai Ehlers also does things with his zone entry ability and speed and all of those things that Gabriel Valardi doesn't do. So again, you're going to have to see how things shake down, but both of those guys will be playing, heavy minutes for the Jets, and for the Jets to stay, in competition for the Central Division title, they need both Ehlers and Valardi to stay healthy, and they need them to be highly productive, and that's the way that the Jets are going to, be battling with, the likes of the Dallas Stars and Colorado Avalanche and Nashville Predators for a top spot in the Central Division.
Yeah, I think going to be a really interesting year for Gabe Valardi. Looking forward to seeing what you got in the free press there, Ken. He's an RFA after this season. He signed the 2-year deal coming over from LA. And when he was in the lineup, he was one of the top players in the league. Battled a couple injuries, which have been a problem for him. But didn't he have a mono? No. Sorry, what was it? What was the thing?
Large spleen, but it was the second thing.
Sorry, yes, spleen was the word that we were using quite a bit. So we'll see what happens with him. 36 points in 47 games over an 82-game season. That's 62 points. Would be really nice if he could up that 47 games played. I said word of this season last year was spleen, but the word of the day yesterday was bumper on the power play. It seems like the Jets go. They were bottom third in the league in power play. You were there. What did you see from their special teams practice a couple days ago that the new assistant coaches are trying to implement?
Sure, Remo. I mean, obviously, Nikolai Ehlers getting the first chance in the high slot. I mean, Scott Arniel used the term bumper, but I have to say that from my conversation with Davis Payne in Las Vegas earlier in June at the NHL draft, he doesn't like the term. He doesn't prefer the bumper as the name of the position. Just use the high slot for now. There's going to be a lot more movement, and again, the practice itself. You had Mike on, and Mike. I mean, the Jets' power play wasn't exactly in pristine form, is what I would say the other day. But I think what we saw in the game itself, and again, these are mostly AHL penalty killers. Let's not get crazy here, but the puck movement that the Jets had in the game itself against the Oilers or the Oilers farm team, however you want to refer to them. You saw incredible puck movement on that first power play that the top unit had. You saw them come through with a snapper from Colin Miller and a really nice shot from Brad Lambert. So, but the bigger thing for me, Remo, in those games is what kind of movement did the Jets have? And I saw, there were some pretty plays that were made. Maybe, you could maybe accuse them of a little bit of overpassing at times, but the lanes were available and the puck movement was really sound. And those are things that they're going to be leaning on as they move forward here this season. And yeah, I mean, it's a change for Nikolai Ehlers, but he said all the right things, and he had some good success. Remo, actually, I got bad news. I think Scott Arniel is on his way here already. It's a little bit earlier than we had projected here, but I think I might have to bounce here. Can you get Tommy? Can you pop Tommy in a bit earlier or no?
We'll pop Tommy in. Maybe you can come back 45. We can talk about what he talked about. You got to go, though.
Sure,
So
sounds good.
waiting
buddy.
on that.
I do have to go. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, get out of here, Ken. There he is.
Get
Ken
the
Wiebe.
updates. Sorry about that.
Hey, it's all good. There's Ken live on location. Hockey for All Center. Getting ready. You got to get in there quick, into the room, put those things on your feet, and you don't want to mess up the carpet there. Don't want that to happen. There's Ken Wiebe, Winnipeg Free Press. See the latest in their Hockey for All Center. As far as updates, we are waiting to hear about Logan Stanley. Was a late scratch. Dylan Samberg not on the ice tonight. But hey, we talked so much about the Jets' perspective of last night's game. What are people in Edmonton thinking watching that? I talked with Tom Gazola earlier. He watched that whole game. We're going to get to Tommy's comments quickly, but first, here's Huss.
Of course, we got a big Blue Bomber game on Friday night. The rematch, Bombers Elks, MBT starting for the Edmonton Elks coming into Princess Auto Stadium to take on the Bombers. Other big news, Jeremiah Masoli getting the start for Ottawa in Saskatchewan. We'll be all over it this week on the show. Of course, all of our Bomber reports are brought to you by Princess Auto, proud sponsors of WST, and of course, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And the home of the Bombers, Princess Auto Stadium, will be packed and will be rocking on Friday night for the big game. Get there early. Princess Auto tailgate zone 2 hours before game time. $5 beers, $3.50 poppin' hot dogs, entertainment, inflatables for the kids. It is absolutely the place to be. Weather looks like it's going to be gorgeous. So get on out there early and make the entire Princess Auto Stadium experience a full one with the Princess Auto tailgate party beforehand. Of course, Princess Auto founded and headquartered right here in Winnipeg, taking care of our Bomber fans and, of course, Winnipeg sports fans as well. You can get the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new at Princess Auto. Visit them on Panet Road, Portage Avenue West, or shop online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. Speaking of Princess Auto Stadium, I hope that they have replenished the Canadian Club stock coming out of the Banjo Bowl for the game on Friday. Canadian Club is, of course, the official spirit of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and is available throughout Princess Auto Stadium on game days. While you're there, you might want to check out Canadian Club and Ginger Ale, premixed cocktail in cans. One of my favorite drinks of the summer and a very popular one for Bomber fans as well. That is available at Princess Auto Stadium. And while the entire Canadian Club family of spirits are available at your local Manitoba Liquor Mart, you can also pick up CC and Ginger on your next trip to your local beer store, so keep your eyes out on that. Big thanks to Canadian Club for their continued support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. Folks, if you have fencing or overhead door needs, there's only one place you need to go in Winnipeg, and that, of course, is Wallace & Wallace. And that hasn't changed for about 7 decades because they've been the leaders in both since 1946. If your property needs the security and protection of a new fence, Wallace & Wallace has you covered with vinyl, ornamental, welded wire, chain link, or wood fences. And if you need a new garage door, talk to the experts at Wallace & Wallace about one because they have the largest selection in Manitoba as the exclusive Clopay dealer in town. That new garage door will beautify your house and add value to it as well. Give Wallace & Wallace a call, 204-452-2700. Their team will arrange a time to come out and give you a free estimate. You can also visit them at wallacefences.com, wallacedoors.com, or pop down to their showroom on Lawson Crescent off of Kenaston. And folks, while we've got gorgeous weather this week, fall is pretty much here. And as we get into the new season, if you are looking into your closet and realize that you need to maybe up your menswear game, we got you covered. Head on down to F Apparel, 190 Smith Street downtown for the best in custom men's clothing. Custom suits beginning at just $400, along with chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, and the best selection of menswear accessories available in town. If you are getting married this year or in a wedding party coming up in the future, Make sure to talk to the fellas at F about a 15% discount for the entire wedding party when you get your suits at F Apparel. F is at 190 Smith Street downtown. You can find out more information or book an appointment to come in for a fitting online at F. That's EPHapparel.com.
There's Hussies at the President's Cup, Royal Montreal. Huss did mention off the start of the show, I didn't get into the game experience that I had, but shout out to True North and the Jets for inviting me and Winnipeg Sports Talk to the a nice tour of the facility as part of with a bunch of Instagram influencers. I did see Winnipeg Eats, the couple from that, Carter Chen there. Some of you may follow them. Some of you may have no idea what I'm talking about, but they gave a bunch of people a tour, sampled some of the new food options. There was a brisket option, a pulled pork cubano, which I have been obsessed with since the movie Chef. Great film. And there was some kind of a corned beef one. The new dessert options were pretty good. There's some ice cream with a brownie, tried, very good. Cheesecake pop, delicious. Banana and whipped cream. So I would look out for that sweet treats at the Canada Life Center this season. Exciting to have that kind of option there. A couple changes I noticed when walking in. They got these new scanners there. No more emptying your pockets. If you're like me, you got like wallet, keys, phone, but maybe I bring the charger, bring a lot of stuff. Got to plop it all on the table, put it back in. You don't have to do that anymore. You just walk in. New machines. I was talking to Daniel Fink. He said same ones they have at Disney. So that was kind of cool. Make it a bit faster to get into the arena. They did have, I put it on our Instagram story. They got the new stage there in the arena above where the Zamboni goes in. So they're going to have bands. They have their own house band, Mach 10. But last night it was Dirty Catfish brass band who you've seen at games playing on the concourse. It was pretty cool, I have to say, enjoying having them playing in the arena. They did play a nice cover of George Michael's Faith. Would I have preferred a cover of the Limp Bizkit version? Maybe, but I think people in the arena were enjoying it, added to the atmosphere, and they did sample the new sound system there. Which I thought was definitely more clear as they pumped some stuff, really loud to show it off, and the on-ice projection system. We do have a quick Jets update before we get into Tom Gazzola. Scott Billick on X, formerly known as Twitter, putting this out there as I go through my in-game experience last night. Here it is. Logan Stanley update. He tweaked something, whatever that means, day to day. Dylan Sandberg update. Maintenance after ready night. I don't know what that means. That must be a typo. He says maintenance for Dylan Sandberg. He's in tomorrow. Billy Heinola. Oh, man. Another surgery for Billy Heinola. Timeline. Unknown. That is a sad thing for a guy who was so close to making the NHL last year, broke his ankle, and to go through physicals, medicals at the start of this season, find an infection at the site of his surgery last year, to have yet another surgery. We'll wait in here for the young former first-round draft pick who was waivers exempt, so timeline unknown for Villy. Another quote from Scott Arniel. For all of us reading into the groupings, he says, don't read into Brad Lambert being in the second group today. He just wanted to give Lambert a lighter load after playing last night. He plays again tomorrow. I haven't seen rosters or anything yet. We'll have to keep in touch. On that. So there's Scott Billick with the Jets update. I'll wait and see if Ken, who's the fastest. Ken was the fastest with the lines on day one of training camp, and he's got the same update there. So it just says about Stanley is dealing with so Scott said Stanley tweaked something. Ken saying Stanley is dealing with, quote, an issue, and further testing is required before the severity is known. And again, Billy Hainel to be determined. So there's your Jets injury update that Ken had to leave and get. And let's see if Murat's got any other additional information before we get to Tommy Gazzola. We just had the lines here from Murat. Well, the Jets had their, I don't want to call it the A lineup, but pretty close to an NHL roster, a lot of NHL players. The Oilers, not so much. I talked with Tom Gazzola earlier with Edmonton Sports Talk. He watched that game. We didn't talk too much about the Oilers roster, but some big questions for them this offseason, or from the offseason heading into this season. Big one for them, trying to get back to the Stanley Cup final. And it is Jets versus Edmonton, or Winnipeg versus Edmonton week. The Elks going with the QB changes. Tommy shed some light on that as well. Here is Tom Gazzola from Edmonton Sports Talk. Tom, what's going on? How's it going over there in Edmonton?
Day of mourning, Remo, after a very, very tough loss in Winnipeg for the Edmonton Oilers. And then the clouds look ominous for Friday when it comes to the Elks in Winnipeg. I'm just kidding. It's good. Everybody's fine over here. Lots of Winnipeg content to talk about here in Edmonton, but that means that we're full pull CFL with playoff implications this weekend. And then the other thing, too, is we're trying to figure out what the heck's going on with this Oilers team that iced a very AHL-heavy lineup yesterday in Winnipeg. Remo, believe it or not, we did have people texting into the morning show going, what the hell happened last night with the Oilers? How did they get beaten so bad by the Winnipeg Jets? And Eric and Dusty were just like, just go look at the rosters and you'll have your answer. And sure enough, they're like, oh, yeah, good point.
Yeah, I was looking at the Oilers preseason, Tom. 2 losses to Calgary, a loss to Winnipeg, panic in Edmonton. But yeah, I looked at the roster. I was going to be like, yeah, can he take away anything? I think there were maybe 4 guys who played a regular shift in the NHL last year in the lineup for Edmonton. So it seems like they're kind of just trying to make their way through the preseason, have everyone healthy, and take another run here at making it back to the Cup final.
Pretty good way to sum it up. I mean, they lost 12-4 by aggregate against Calgary on Monday, so that was a tough one in Calgary and here in Edmonton. They got spanked pretty handily, but it's a long preseason, and the Oilers rolled out another 8-game preseason schedule, and yesterday marked the halfway point. And I guess if you're watching from an Oilers standpoint last night, you're watching them go up against some, a good chunk of the Jets starting lineup, and the Winnipeg Jets starting lineup, that's a hell of a hockey team over there. I've said it before. I'll say it again. That lineup is excellent. And that's why they were tied for 4th in the NHL last year. They're going to have another good season in a tough Central Division. But from an Oilers standpoint, you get Stuart Skinner in his first start. He allows 4 goals on, I think it was like 26 or 27 shots. And then Colin Delia goes in and mops things up in the 3rd period. And I think we pretty much know what we're going to see from Colin Delia down in Bakersfield. He's a serviceable guy that can get called up, has played in the NHL. Outside of that, working your way out from the blue line to the forwards, Brett Kulak and Ty Emberson were the players of note on the back end for Edmonton last night. Obviously, they had a tough go handling a lot of the Jet stars, and Ty Emberson's kind of the guy a lot of Oiler fans are curious about, because when the trade for Cody Ceci to get him shipped out of here to San Jose happened, people were waiting and hoping that there would be a bigger name coming back, or a more steady right shot D-man that could come in and be Darnell Nurse's partner that would be a step up over Cody Ceci. And everybody kind of defaulted to Ty Emberson, who has 30 NHL games under his belt with the San Jose Sharks. And that's not a long list of accolades at the NHL level for a defenseman to be thrust into the second pair role with a D-man in Darnell Nurse, who had his struggles last year. So, there's optimism around that guy. People want to see him become a good story for the Oilers, but, they have to keep in mind that he's only played, 30 games, and then that's tough to do. And to step into a tougher role like he'll have to if he does earn it in training camp. So I think him and Kulak were, the Oilers' best D-men last night. And unfortunately, that's not saying much with how good Winnipeg was and how not so good the Oilers lineup was in general. And then, you look at the forward group, I liked Sam O'Reilly, the Oilers' first-round pick that they traded up for this past draft, and he's a tenacious 18-year-old playing in London, and he's looked all right, facing some NHL competition. And Mike Hoffman played last night. We saw Connor Brown scored the Oilers' lone goal, and Matthias Janmark, and they were all right. So outside of that, I don't think you're expecting miracles from Mike Hoffman, who's in on a PTO. And Drake Gazzola was one of the guys that stood out, 7 years ago. He was a regular on the Oilers, but he's a veteran presence in the AHL for them now. So that wasn't a great night, a glowing night for the Orange and Blue. But you got to keep in mind that there is the caveat that was an AHL heavy team that was sent out to Winnipeg yesterday.
Yeah, I almost felt bad for Skinner at times. Not exactly an NHL. Well, they had the two guys in front of him, maybe one regular from last year in front of him on defense. So, like the Jets, they got a home crowd there. We want to go and see the regular Jets in the lineup, and we certainly saw that last night, and they performed pretty good. But just on the Oilers offseason as a whole, very interesting last month with the Holloway and Broberg offer sheets. Have they recovered from all that, do you think?
The fan base, I feel like, is kind of moving on and not dwelling and, scorned lovers, if you will, because there was a lot of optimism for those two. Broberg, especially after the 10 games in the postseason that he played, where he looked really good and tough circumstances, being thrust into a really, really competitive Western Conference final against the Stars and holding his own. And then obviously, going the full bore 7 games with the Florida Panthers in the Stanley Cup final, where he was a bright spot on the back end. That hurt them. And, when Oilers fans look at it and they weigh the price point that the Blues paid for what they're going to get in Philip Broberg, who's played 81 regular season NHL games, I think they kind of understand it as a whole. Some really are hurt by it. And then, you look at the Dylan Holloway situation, Remo, and there's kind of a homegrown kind of guy. He's from not too far away from here. I know he's more in the Calgary area is where he kind of grew up, but he kind of felt like a true Albertan Oiler, you know what I mean? And he won over a lot of people. There's a lot of optimism for Dylan Holloway, and that's one where you're like, really, like you're leaving all this potential to go to St. Louis for an extra $1 million or $2 million when that payday was likely coming here in Edmonton. So that kind of irritated the fan base, and I totally understand. I think the Oilers as a franchise and organization were probably put off by Dylan Holloway jumping for the money, but overall, I think they've gotten over it. But it's still kind of like, well, the team had to scramble. They go get Podkolzin. Not really sure what he is at this point. He's got a fresh start after a couple of rough years in Vancouver. Can he fill in where Holloway was, and probably should be able to? He's got experience, and Holloway really hasn't, blossomed with his offense in the NHL just yet. So, we'll see if Podkolzin can fill that gap. And then, truthfully, Mike, like they haven't filled the hole that Broberg left behind. They've got 3 guys in Josh Brown, Troy Stetcher, and the aforementioned Ty Emberson that are kind of fighting for that spot. And then, Travis Dermott's here on a PTO, but there's definitely a void there on the right side.
Yeah, forward, I'm interested to see Jeff Skinner and Victor Arvidsson, the acquisitions from this offseason. Where do those guys fit in the lineup, and are they expected to be, big, I guess, secondary contributors, big secondary contributors?
Secondary contributors, 100%. I mean, these guys have done it at this level before. They're not old per se, but, they've been around the league for a while. And we know that Arvidsson deals with injuries more often than not. That's kind of what led LA to let him walk. And Jeff Skinner stayed healthy, but, his offensive game is fantastic. Defensive side of things, maybe a little spotty. And kind of his MO is he doesn't necessarily create the offense that he gets. It comes from his line mates and the others that are around him. But as a pure finisher, no better place than here to have guys set you up in Leon Draisaitl or Connor McDavid. And We anticipate him starting on a line with Arvidsson and Draisaitl, and we're going to see that combination a little bit more as the preseason advances here. So yeah, they're 100% expected to be secondary scorers, and I think they understand that role. Let's see if they can excel in that role, because we know that the Oilers have a few thoroughbreds that basically set the pace for them in McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman, obviously, and Nugent Hopkins is part of that. You could throw Evan Bouchard into that mix as well, but you need those secondary weapons, and the Oil feel like they have that. It's been interesting to see them, because like the games that they've played, again, they played the split squad game in Calgary, and that was a night that went sideways pretty quickly, and there wasn't a ton of cohesion with the guys that were playing there. So we'll see how it evolves as training camp progresses. But so far, if you're just judging off of preseason games, not great, but lots to get to still.
Yeah, it's still preseason. One guy who we haven't seen, Evander Kane, he's going under surgery. What's the timeline like for him, and how is it going to affect the team's salary cap? There were some concerns, I guess, which led them to not matching those offer sheets.
Yeah, and like Evander Kane, I think, they put him at somewhere around 5 months, his timeline after multiple surgeries. Yeah. Maybe around the trade deadline, he's ready to go. I don't expect him to get traded, because there was some trade speculation. He's got a no movement clause. It becomes a modified no move in March. So they'll watch him and make sure he heals properly here in Edmonton after getting the surgery. And yeah, the team had to go and make an announcement that he's going to be out for a while. Cap ramifications, they're still under the cap. Stan Bowman talked about that they're in an okay place, but if they have to LTIR him, they certainly can do that. The goal is to upgrade the right side of the blue line to find a good second pairing right shot D-man. Hopefully, if you're an Oilers fan, you're looking at Emerson or Josh Brown or Troy Stetcher, and they can kind of fill that hole in the meantime. But the Oilers certainly are going to want an upgrade on the back end on the right side. And as we've seen in years past, not only have the Oilers done it, other teams in the league have done it. They kind of wait to see dominoes fall with other teams and guys become available that they've been targeting and scouting for a while, and then make a move for them that way. So that's the likely route that the Oilers will take. We're not expecting a major deal anytime soon. It's fun to talk about, though, that's for sure. So Kane out long term, he'll be under the watchful eye of the medical team here, and cap situation, Edmonton certainly kind of, like a lot of teams, playing cap gymnastics, and that's kind of become one of the themes in the NHL over the last few years.
Yeah, I'm on Puckpedia, just under $1 million in cap space. Moving on from the Oilers to the Bombers' opponent on Friday. What do you make of this QB situation? It's where they start with MBT, then they go to Ford, then Ford gets injured, back to MBT, then Ford's healthy, and Thompson's playing great. But hey, they go back to Ford, and then Ford tanks against the Bombers, and they bring in Bethel Thompson. Now it's back to Bethel Thompson. Why can't these guys make up their minds here?
Well, that's a great point. One guy gets hurt, one guy plays bad, the other guy starts playing really well, the other guy gets healthy. It's just been like this roller coaster ride all season long with these two. McLeod Bethel Thompson has looked good more so recently. He's been pretty steady all season, honestly, Remo, but early in the season couldn't get them over the hump. They did have a few games go down to the wire. Last second field goals cost them. And there were times where drives stalled and he underthrew a few guys here and there, and some questionable checkdowns, and led to, situations where you're like, where the hell did that play and that drive go? Because that was not it. I think back to, it was the Montreal game, where they had a third and goal or third and 10 in the red zone, and Bethel Thompson ended up throwing a quick 6-yard out to somebody on a button hook, and it's like, what was that? So things like that have frustrated the fan base. And then Trey Ford comes in, he plays excellent, helps lead them to a couple of victories, provides a spark in the turnaround. and then he gets hurt. And then now Bethel Thompson goes back in. He has some success, has one of his best games ever against Hamilton, plays really, really well in the Labor Day rematch and the Labor Day Classic. And then right after the rematch, he gets a little bit nicked up, and they announced Trey Ford's going to start. Then Ford starts against the Bombers last week, and there was no offense in that first half, 3-0 at half, you'll recall, as will a lot of Bombers fans in Winnipeg. So the game was there. Like, even in the third quarter, the game was there for the taking for the Elks. The Bombers defense was playing really well, stymieing Trey Ford. He admittedly had a bad game. He said it himself post-game, and they brought MBT in. And I guess it's a double-edged sword. You got two quarterbacks who are capable. Unfortunately, at one point, one's going while the other's not. At another point in the season, both guys were giving you something. And then right now, the Elks are just looking for a spark from either one of them against a red-hot Bombers team. So ultimately, Remo, I would say last week was the game. If you were talking about this back-to-back, home and home, I thought the Elks' best chance to win was that one. It's going to be tough tomorrow night at Princess Auto Stadium, because if you're riding high, you get a sellout crowd in Winnipeg, and your team's on a 6-game heater like the Bombers are. I mean, if you're the Elks, try to use the last loss as motivation, maybe make some adjustments, but you're going to have to get off to a way better start than you did last week, because that ended up being a rough game for the Green and Gold.
Yeah, we're looking forward to seeing the rematch Friday, Princess Auto Stadium. As you mentioned, sold-out crowd, and the weather here has been fantastic, so it should be a great one. Tom, thanks so much for coming on and taking the time to join me to run over the Oilers and Elks.
Anytime, Remo. Bring on the Bombers on Friday. Let's see what happens.
There he is, Tom Gazola, Edmonton Sports Talk, talking Oilers as they try to return to the Stanley Cup Final. Can Connor McDavid add a championship to his resume, following the footsteps of other generational players, Crosby, McKinnon? We can throw Ovechkin in there too. McDavid searching for a cup. So close last season, and the Elks trying to get into the playoffs, going with the flip-flopping at quarterback. Will it work out? We did have a quick Jets update before, we played that. Ken Wiebe has demanded to return before Derek. Sorry, Derek. Ken wants to get in quickly. Ken, some new developments there.
I never want to steal DT's airtime here, so he was kind enough for me to open up a couple play-by-play opportunities back in the Bison days at at UMFM, but. Just quickly from Scott Arniel here, Dylan Sandberg, no concern whatsoever. He was, simple maintenance day. Ville Heinola has had a secondary surgery to remove the pin in his ankle. So, probably looking at a minimum of a month here. I would say it's probably longer than that. But again, it depends. I'm not a doctor, neither is Scott Arniel. So I still think it's in that 4 to 8 week category. And lastly here, we're not going to get an update until tomorrow officially, but Logan Stanley has an injury that is sounding, I'm not going to say ominous, but it's definitely in the beyond day-to-day category. So in some ways, it's a perfect segue to DT, because he had a ton of injury issues that he was having to report on in the early stage. Well, quite frankly, throughout the entire season for the Bombers here, but the battle for the 5, 6, 7, 8, or if they get to 8 on the back end for the Winnipeg Jets, certainly the door is wider open if your name is Hayden. So thanks for squeezing me in. Have a great day, Remo. Thanks for having me. DT, enjoy the sellout crowd on Friday night. Should be a fun one with the Elks.
Hockey for All Center. Thank you, Ken. Had to get in, so we'll wait and see on Logan Stanley. And he cut out briefly there, but was saying the door opening, Hayden Fleury. But we're going to move from the Jets to the Bombers. And fresh off of walkthrough, I'm about to bring in Derek Taylor. Hold on, I got a little issue. There we go. DT. What's going on, man? How was depth charts coming out today? seemed like compared to past weeks, not a lot of changes for the Bombers after their big win against Edmonton on Saturday.
Yeah, literally, there were only two, right? And one of them we knew was coming, and Kyrie Wilson, who didn't play against Edmonton, but we thought might. He comes out. Brian Cole comes on. Cole, they can use it linebacker. They can use it defensive back. So great to have him coming back from injury. And then one that I think is probably connected to the change at quarterback, though Mike O'Shea wouldn't say that. Devin Adams comes back in at defensive tackle. They take off Kendall Randolph, who was a depth offensive lineman, and Devin Adams comes back in because what we saw last week, right? Trey Ford has a potential to scramble around. Okay, well, we'll give you 3 rushers and 2 spies using only 3 defensive linemen. This week, McLeod Bethel-Thompson, a little more conventional in the pocket. We may get a chance to generate a little more pass rush. So maybe a little more 4-man pass rush. So, hey, let's get a 7th defensive lineman in there. But yeah, for a team that's been just crushed with injuries at parts this season, this is nice to be able to go into a game going, yeah, we know who our personnel will be.
Yeah, and I didn't really we went from you to Campbell. Thanks for coming on, Derek. Nice to be talking with you here. And yeah, it sees that, you had the Big Hill injury, the Lawler injury. You've gotten overshown out for the year. But, I looked at the injury report. It's just Lucky Whitehead, didn't practice, and he's kind of been the thing for him, but still playing in the games. Nothing to worry about there with Lucky. He was removed, the next day, and he'll be good to go in the return game on, I guess, tomorrow night, sold out crowd, Princess Auto Stadium.
Yeah. Lucky's been interesting, right? Like, he gets some spots on offense. I think it's probably maybe 100 snaps so far. He is not, if we were hoping that he was going to be the thing that put a charge in this return game, well, it hasn't really happened, right? Apart from that one on Labor Day, which set up the important Castillo field goal. It's super interesting. Like, the defense has been kind of the thing we can count on. Special teams coverage, okay, yep. But when's the return thing going to kick in? When's the big play on the returns? And it's not there yet. And they might need some if this offense, never stops spinning its tires. They might need some points from the return team instead of the 2 touchdowns on special teams. You might be saying, well, they already have 2, and those were on the cover teams, right? Those were coverage teams scoring. So yeah, hopefully Lucky can battle through this ankle problem for the 3rd week, not practicing, and just get some better field position would be great from those 12 on the return team.
Yeah, field position so huge, and you haven't seen those. It gets tough watching the Argos every week. Janarian Grant has some crazy return, and you're like, yeah, we used to play for the Bombers. Remember those days? But talking about the offense spinning its wheels. Claris hasn't had a couple of those massive games, only throwing for 191. It was Brady doing all the work. But what do you think of Carrick Wheatfall's return? They moved out Josh Johnson. He had that big game, and then he got hurt. But you think he can help spark things? Ontario Wilson had his first big game in a couple weeks. Seems like now with those 4 guys, Wilson, Wheatfall, Lawler, Dembski, we might see some more fireworks in the pass game.
Oh, I do for sure. The one thing with Johnson, whether it was the way they used him or it's just Johnson's skill set, there wasn't much for him, right? Even intermediate or deep range, he ended up being the wide receiver screen guy or the hitch guy. And okay, great, 16 catches for whatever it was, $136 in 10 games. What are we doing here? Carrick Wheatfall is at least a guy who you can see stretching the field a little better, a little taller, a little rangier as well. And you think, okay, well, if he can stretch the field, and Kenny Lawler can stretch the field because he was this far away from a big play last week. Zach just barely missed him going left to right. Nick Dembski obviously can stretch the field as well and do some of that underneath stuff. Kevin's Clercius possession stuff, Lucky Whitehead, the horizontal stuff. You go, oh, okay, now this might be as good as it looks this season, right? Schoen's not coming back from his knee injury, so that would obviously take it up over the top. But this with Wheatfall might be as good as it's the receiving core can be this season. So yeah, I thought he was just fine in the game in Edmonton. It wasn't huge, it wasn't nothing. So I thought he was just fine, and he's got that potential, right? He owns the Bombers' longest touchdown of the season at 76 yards. So he just adds, I think, a little extra push down the field, and something that defensive backs need to go, I can't make a mistake here or Zach is going to burn me.
Yeah, and we haven't seen that explosive Bombers offense that we have the last couple of years. A lot of getting into the red zone, but settling for field goals, and Sergio Castillo's done an exceptional job on that. And, when they started 0-4, we weren't sure how the season would end, but they are one win away if they win Friday, clinching the playoffs. What has, I asked Darren this yesterday, what has changed for you, or what have you seen differently from the Bombers now, this on this win streak compared to when they started the season 0-4?
Yeah, there are two things for me, and we talked about them when they were 0-4 and when they were 2-6, and I don't know if people thought we were kind of griping or just shouting at the rain, but injuries and bad luck, honestly, were for me two enormous factors, right? The injuries we've talked about, plus add in the couple of free agent losses, you go, oh, it's not last year's 14-win team, but they should be an 11-win team, a 12-win team. And then Kenny Lawler immediately breaks his arm, and Dalton Schoen goes down in game number 3. Adam Bighill's been hurt 3 separate times this season. Kyrie goes down. They lose Jamal Parker for the season. Cam Lawson doesn't get to play this year with his injury, and on and on and on. And then I keep going back to, do you remember the Nick Dembski fumbles? Like, Dembski fumbled 4 times this season in some critical spots. And then I had to look back at his numbers and go, he fumbled once the previous 2 seasons combined. To me, that's bad luck, right? Dembski will say, I should cover this up, blah, blah, blah. But Jameer Thurman doesn't make incredible punch-outs like that on every tackle, right? It just happened to happen to Dembski. And in that Saskatchewan game, Brady fumbles as they're going into score. And you go, okay, this is fumbles and bad luck at the wrong time. This will correct itself. And what have we seen? Okay, well, fewer fumbles, fewer turnovers. Zach still gets picked in this last game, but I think Kenny Lawler may not be exactly where Zach thought he would be. Luck regresses to the mean, injuries, you get guys back healthy, and all of a sudden we start to see, okay, what is this team really? And, they're 6 wins in a row looking for, they could win 10 in a row, go to the playoffs, and we would all kind of forget where they were and where they started.
That's, been quite a season where we weren't sure if we get a playoff game. Now we're like, oh, is there going to be a home playoff game? Oh, is it going to be a home West final again? Yeah. And the Bombers on this win streak. BC's been, they got Nathan Rourke. They went on the losing streak, got Nathan Rourke. He's been inconsistent, or at least their O-line has. I think in Saskatchewan, they can't seem to win after Labor Day year after year, though they did win last week. One of the stories coming into the season, Jordan Younger taking over at defensive coordinator. I mean, you have to be impressed with the way things have gone. You think there was a bit of an adjustment there over the first few games? Like, how has the defense changed as the season has gone on?
Yeah, it's definitely improved as the season has gone along. One thing to note is I think last year the number into last week's game, it was like the defense had allowed 16 points a game to the opposing offense. This year it was more like 20. So it wasn't necessarily as good as last year, but it's much more critical that they be good this year. And for me, one of the things I think probably took some getting used to was just the number of different packages and way he utilizes players that Jordan Younger has. This past game, you looked out in the field, and if you're used to 4 defensive linemen, 2 linebackers, and 6 defensive backs, well, what you would have been thinking when you saw 3, 0, and literally 9 defensive backs on the field to contain Trey Ford and that offense. You go, 9 defensive backs. Well, you just started with that 8 one, probably, week 5, week 6, and you're doing the overhang linebackers. And okay, so Kyrie Wilson is kind of a rush end in this set, and Jordan's got all these ideas of how to stop opposing defenses. And I don't want to say like he's just throwing stuff at a dartboard, like fleshed out ideas of how do we stop this team on this day. You can get anything. Okay, well, Jake Kelly's in on a play. Okay, well, Tony Jones is the lone linebacker making huge plays. I think that probably took a lot of getting used to, right? Oh, it's a 3-man front and we're all defensive tackles. Oh, okay, well, I'm Jake Thomas and I have to bounce outside a little bit. Now I have different responsibilities here. Once they kind of get hold of that, and it wasn't perfect in the Edmonton game with almost 200 yards rushing. Once they got a hold of that and realized, oh, we're all going to have to contribute, all 22, 23 of us, however many on defense. Oh, okay, let's go do it. And man, they've been critically important to this winning streak.
Yeah, for the first, part, they weren't getting a lot of turnovers, and you saw turnovers a huge part of the last win against Edmonton. One thing to note, Trey Ford didn't have a great game, 2 interceptions. McLeod Bethel-Thompson, he's okay, 5 for 10, but Justin Rankin, 157 yards on 14 carries. Is that a function of them bringing in all those DBs to try to sell out and stop Trey Ford? How are you going to slow down, or how are they going to slow down the run game tomorrow night?
Yeah, that's the thing I'm just in the process of looking at now. I wonder how much they got hit in those 9 and 8 DB packages. But when it was Rankin and stuff like that, one thing that was very apparent for the Elks the last couple of seasons is the difference in their effectiveness with running backs when it's Trey Ford at quarterback versus anybody else. I always come back to Kevin Brown last year, was around 4 yards a carry when McLeod Bethel-Thompson was at quarterback, and he was 7 yards a carry when Trey Ford was at quarterback. My hypothesis, and I'm pretty sure it's right, you have to also be worried about Trey Ford in the run game, so you can't be committed to stop the running back in the same way that you can with McLeod Bethel-Thompson. So for me, as much as they contain Trey Ford to 2 carries for 9 yards, I feel like some of Rankin going for 53 and then for 30 plus was a factor of, hey, Ford's in this game too, and we need to be concerned about this because Ford could easily, be the one hitting them for 50 plus yards if you let him go. So I think they'll just be a natural. We'll watch this game and listen to this game tomorrow and go, oh, they're doing much better against the run. And I feel like some of that will be, hey, we don't have to worry about the quarterback, so it's back to being 11 on 12. But nobody, they should never hit you for 53 yards, right? So there is some stuff to clean up, but there'll be just a natural containing of the run just because if Trey Ford's not in there, the Elks running attack is a different beast.
Yeah, and you're looking at Edmonton. They've flip-flopped on quarterbacks. I thought they were going to start the year with Trey Ford, but they signed Bethel-Thompson in the offseason. Then they started him. Then they went back to Trey Ford. Then he got injured, back to Thompson. And then, in the bye, they said, oh, no, Trey Ford's a start. I mean, which guy do you think gives them the best chance to win? I'm not.
Oh, yeah. For me, it's the best chance to win and make the playoffs is McLeod Bethel-Thompson. But this is the part, right? The Elks season has been, the beginning was Chris Jones needs to win football games, right? Because 2 bad years, are they really going to let me, finish a third bad year? So I need to get a quarterback. Here's McLeod. He's not the best, but he might be the 3rd, 4th best quarterback in the league if things go well, right? So you had that factor. The coach gets fired. Now he can do whatever we want. Jarius Jackson can do whatever he wants. But now they're in a spot of, are we making the playoffs? And what do we feel about Trey Ford's contract, which is up at the end of the year? So they're really being pulled in 2 different directions, right? You'd love to make the playoffs for the heat that would bring to football in Edmonton with the new owner. And that crowd last week was the best one I've seen there in 5 years in calling games. But at the same time, what do we do with Trey in the offseason? Are we ready to commit 3 years and $1.2 million to Trey Ford with what we've seen? Oh, gosh, we have 2 very conflicting priorities here, at least in my mind, of MBT gives a better chance to win, but Trey Ford might be the future, and we have a deadline on that. We have to decide by the end of this season what we're going to do with him next year. So for me, playoffs, it's McLeod Bethel-Thompson. But man, try to make a decision on that'll be, Trey Ford's going to want money and his agent's going to go, yeah, you need to pay our guy because look at what he's done for you. Are they going to be in a position to do that if they stay in this playoff race? So yeah, they're in a real interesting spot. One of those ones, Michael, where I'm so glad I'm not a GM and I don't have to make decisions like that because I don't know what I would do. Punt on this season and see what the future is, or go for it and risk what the future might be.
Yeah, it's tough, especially, setting a sports record for home losses in a row. Not many people wanting to go see, and then finally getting a crowd for last game, and you lose a tight one. You talk about tough decisions. It's going to be real tough for you and the voters, DT, with MOP. I love this MOP discussion. But I wouldn't even get to league MOP. Who are you picking for Bombers MOP? Because I think Brady is probably the leader. He was the guy last year. I don't think Zach has had the numbers this year, but I mean, most valuable, you could make an argument for sure. Tyrell Ford, an option.
Yep.
Willie Jefferson's up there in sacks, but Sergio Castillo, I think, could get some love too. Who's on your ballot here for Bombers MOP?
Yeah, if this truly were an outstanding player award, it's Sergio Castillo. Like he even with the 2 doinks last week, he's still on a record pace of the CFL as far as points produced above expected, right? He's already set the record for a career for 60-yard kicks. He's done that in one season. He set the single season record for 50+ yard kicks. He's been critical to winning some games. So if it was truly an outstanding player award, it's probably Sergio. But let's just look at the history of the award. It ends up being really who's most valuable. So it defaults to quarterbacks and it defaults to other players. You named the 3 that would be on my ballot. And at this exact moment with 4 games remaining, for me, it's Oliveira 1, Ford 2, Jefferson 3. And then it would be a massive gap for me to even think of who would be 4th in that list. But yeah, right now it's Brady Oliveira. And, I took a lot of flack from Hustler, and fans here, rightfully so, for saying Chad Kelly was more outstanding last year, giving him my vote. But I'm not totally against running backs. And when you look at what Brady has done, and when you think about the season that has been for the Bombers and what the passing offense has been for the Bombers, they're not here without Brady Oliveira by any stretch. He fought through that injury early on, and I mean, he's been as good as there is, certainly as far as running back. But man, we're pushing to a point where he's easily one of the top offensive players in the league, period. Even if you, like me, you kind of discount the impacts of the run game. So yeah, right now it's Brady. If Tyrell Ford has a couple of picks or Willie Jefferson goes on a sack run that nobody in the league seems to have this year, maybe. But right now it's Brady, and I think Brady's got to be the front runner in the West. McInnes in BC, Roland Milligan, if he snaps a couple picks in Sask, maybe we're talking about that. Calgary don't care, Edmonton don't care. Yeah, it's right now it's Brady, and who comes out of the East will be, man. Just one for you, Remis. What if Montreal does not nominate Cody Fajardo? What happens to the vote then? Everything is blown up. If Fajardo, if it's Tyrese Beverette in Montreal and not Fajardo, then anything is on the table when it comes to final MOP voting.
Yeah, Beverette leading the league in tackles. I don't think Walter Fletcher would be an option. They haven't had the receiver Austin Mack came back and got injured, and yeah, Philpott I thought was on his way. He got injured.
Absolutely.
And yeah, Julian Grant, he's been in and out. They just haven't had the consistency. And Fajardo's been good, but has he been the most outstanding? And I mean, Davis Alexander went in too. Like, can you combine them into one player, the Montreal quarterback?
Yeah, like Fajardo, like that week 21 game against the Bombers probably won't mean anything for Fajardo. So will he even play? Yeah, like he's going to finish the season with 3,300 yards and 18 touchdowns. Is that the most outstanding player? Can you say him over? Pretend that Hamilton misses the playoffs. If Levi Mitchell puts up 5,100 yards and 30+ touchdowns, you're going to say Fajardo is more out. We're going to get to the outstanding, valuable thing. Really, Fajardo more so than this? And Beverette is filling up the stat column in Montreal. Like, leads the league in tackles. Oh, and here's sacks and forced fumbles and knockdowns. And Beverette's having a killer year. Montreal's local ballot is going to determine a whole lot in this MOP race. If it's Beverette, then I like Brady Oliveira to potentially take it all should the rest of the season go well, because he's on pace for 1,800 from scrimmage.
I do find this MOP race fascinating. Brady plus 1,400 right now on Coolbet. I think that seems, I don't know, maybe you put him in. Cody Fajardo minus 286. How about Bo Levi Mitchell? I'm kind of getting on the Bo Levi train. You can't argue with the raw numbers, plus 2,000, but I do agree. Some of those yardage came early in the season when they were down a lot, and he would have to throw. And I remember watching Keandre Smith celebrate a touchdown when they were down like two. Like, they're down 14 points. He scored a touchdown. He's celebrating like he tied the game. You think Hamilton, looking at this weekend's games before you read it, can Hamilton beat BC? Is that the game and get this east to west crossover, which has never happened? I love I don't know if you'll be able to watch because you'll be doing post game on CJOB, but I think that's a pretty big one tomorrow night as well.
I was doing a podcast a couple of days ago, and for me, that's the biggest game of the weekend because pretend Winnipeg wins over Edmonton. If BC loses to a very hot Hamilton team, well, the West race is essentially done. The Bombers would need one more win, and BC would need one more loss, and then BC's done. Saskatchewan's a different thing, but it would for me essentially end the race in the West. So that game becomes critical. Hamilton's bad luck has regressed, and things are going better for them, and Bo looks like a threat. That he has a bunch of receiving options, and with I don't know where Greg Bell's at, but he's been able to run the ball particularly effectively for them. That game is fascinating because man, BC. Every team in the West has holes, and BC at 7-7. I didn't think one of their holes would be when Nathan Rourke returns, but these had one game that looked really good, and a bunch of others that looked like 8 of 25. Okay, what's that? 32%? Oh, that's not anything. So yeah, that game to me is absolutely fascinating. I'm going to try to keep an eye on it because it potentially big ramifications of tied atop the West or the Bombers are 4 points clear and essentially it's done will be super interesting. Plus, yeah, I Nathan Rourke, is this who he is? This can't be who he is, can it?
I watched that game. He was pressured. He had no time, and then he scored the rushing touchdown, and they pulled him and put him Vernon Adams. And what happened? The same thing. A guy with no time to throw, and I don't think Rourke got a lot of help from his receivers in last game when he was able to get throws off. So I want to see nighttime, evening Rourke so many times in his big season here a couple years ago. He would play
Hamilton on a
night.
10:30 p.m. game, right? Like that's 10:30 Eastern time for that, whatever it is for that. I wonder how big a deal that'll be for the Ticats.
Well, we'll have to see. And the other game Saturday, Ottawa at Saskatchewan. Ottawa going with Masoli at quarterback. Find that interesting. And Montreal and Toronto kind of getting overlooked. A rematch of last year's East final. DT, I think that's about it here. I don't think I had one more, maybe lost it in my mind, but I appreciate you coming on. I forget it was something good, but I'll have to remember for next time. Thank you so much for hopping on. Looking forward to hearing your call with Doug Brown. Someone was asking how many hot dogs are you guys going to have at the tailgate tomorrow. It should be amazing weather. I got home after the Jets game. It was still like shorts weather. So everyone's going to be rocking at sold out Princess Audio Stadium tomorrow.
Yeah, and come on by. We're there 2 hours before. And I'm not saying, but one of the Hall of Famers on our broadcast is celebrating a milestone birthday in a couple days after the game. So we're going to celebrate it a little bit on Friday. So I'm just saying, if you want to hug Doug Brown, maybe come by the booth there.
There he is. Derek, thank you so much for taking the time and chatting some Bombers and CFL. It was great talking to you.
You too.
There it is. Derek Taylor, DT on OB on X, formerly known as Twitter. Give him a follow. Loves the football stats, the charting, the play-by-play. We're winding the show down. We got one more read here from Hustler. We'll get into some Coolbet lines, and I got a clip here from Scott Arniel. Here's Huss.
First up, though, a big cheers to our friends over at Little Brown Jug.
We're not just for the showboats or the champions. We're here for the good ones. The ones who work hard and show up for others not to get recognized, but because it's the right thing to do. We'd like to think that our good intentions show up in our beer. We keep working to perfect it, not because we want fame or fanfare, but because you deserve it. 1919, the good you deserve.
All right. Hey, I got to shout out our pals over at Royal Sports who are ready for hockey season. Listen, Royal is the hockey superstore in town, and no matter the age or the level of the hockey player in your family, you can knock off the entire list with one stop at Royal Sports. Everything from goalie equipment, protective equipment, a massive stick selection, helmets, all the way to stick tape and skate sharpening. Royal Sports has been the hockey superstore in town for over 40 years at 750 Pembina Highway. And while you're there getting ready to drop the puck, check out their incredible section of Winnipeg Jets and NHL merchandise, Bomber gear for the push to the playoffs, and of course, all the new NFL merchandise coming in right now as the 4-down game is well underway. Royal Sports, Winnipeg's hockey and sports superstore, family-owned for over 40 years, 750 Pembina Highway. Follow them on Instagram at Royal Sports Winnipeg for the latest merchandise drops and sale information. And hey, nice to have a little doubleheader at Boston Pizza last night for Monday Night Football. We've got another doubleheader coming up on Monday, but whether it's Monday Night Football, Thursday Night Football, or a full day of Sundays, Boston Pizza is your NFL headquarters. Pop in for the game and get your chance to win an exclusive trip to Vegas for Super Bowl weekend, along with NFL jerseys, NFL and Boston Pizza swag, and much, much more. And hey, if you are staying at home, you can always get the great taste of Boston Pizza by ordering online at bostonpizza.com. And listen, Jets back in action on Wednesday for preseason action. Their final preseason game will be on the 2nd of October. And as I mentioned to you before, we are very close to launching the WST ticket pack and ticket opportunities for this year. We're going to add some flexibility in it. We're going to have a game of the month. We're going to get the crew together 6 times this year. And it looks like that first game is going to be the 20th of October against you-know-who and the Pittsburgh Penguins. So stay tuned. By the end of this week or early next week, we'll roll it out. You'll have the opportunity to go on the link to reserve your seats and join us for some more great times with the Winnipeg Sports Talk crew at Canada Life Center watching the Winnipeg Jets.
There's us, and probably the only podcast out there that would be referring to, when you say the Pittsburgh Penguins and you-know-who, any other podcast would be Crosby, but here it's Rutger McGroarty, who they traded in the offseason. And if you are looking to go to the Jets home opener, they did give us a nice link, with some special offers on tickets for that game, October 11th, against Connor Bedard and the Chicago Blackhawks. So check the description of this video, or if you're listening on podcast, it's in the description of that too. Same thing, same description. Some good links in there. And yes, working on the ticket plan for a couple Winnipeg Sports Talk nights at Canada Life Center. The best way, we'll listen every day here, of course. I mean, like, subscribe, all that. But we do have a mailing list, a newsletter that goes out every week with some relevant information. The link to that in the description of this video too. I'll put it in the chat as well as it shows up. We're winding down the show. Time for the Coolbet lines. It is Thursday night football, and we do have some more great conversation tomorrow. Ed Tate will tee up the Bombers and Elks. We got Scott Billick of the Winnipeg Sun, and the other one is Hacksaw with his NFL notebook. But Coolbet tonight, we got the Cowboys and Giants -5.5 for the Cowboys. Giants +5.5. Daniel Jones, he's my second quarterback in the Winnipeg Media Fantasy League. Can he get it done? And the Cowboys lost on Sunday. Hasn't gone well. They can't really run the ball, and they can't stop the run. How will it work out for the Cowboys? CFL lines this weekend. The Bombers, 5-point favorites now against Edmonton at home. I had to put my picks in the Edmonton Sports Talk contest. I think I'll lean Bombers at home. BC Lions -7 over Hamilton. That seems like a big number for a team that hasn't done much. Saskatchewan -3.5. And over Ottawa at home. I don't know. I think I might be leaning Ottawa. And Montreal road favorites against Toronto. How about MLB? The MLB season is winding down. I don't know if you saw this yesterday. The Oakland A's last ever game at Oakland County Coliseum. Really sad about what's happened to that team. The owner just doesn't seem to care, doesn't want to spend any money on the team, doesn't want to spend money on a new stadium, wants someone else to pay for it. The fans, they're there when the team cares, but the owner, he's driven everyone away. So I saw scenes of the groundskeeping crew shoveling the dirt from the field into cups for fans to take home. MLB Futures World Series, the Blue Jays, they're not going to be in the playoffs, but the Dodgers plus 350, Yankees, Phillies, Astros clinched again, Guardians plus 900, could it be their year? Padres, Orioles, Brewers, Diamondbacks made it to the World Series last year plus 2,500. I'm kind of getting on the World Series train. Shohei Ohtani and the Dodgers, heavy favorite. I did enjoy the NHL Futures looking over with Connor. Yesterday, we had awards. Art Trophy, McDavid, plus 170. Norris, Makar, some big favorites there. Vezina, a bit up in the air. Maybe Hellebuck can repeat. And back on Oakland, I just see Spency saying, sucks to be an Oakland sports fan. Raiders leaving. Golden State Warriors moving. And now the A's. We got the Richard Trophy. Austin Matthews, very heavy favorite, minus 115. And Art Ross as well. Calder Trophy, Matvey Michkov, the favorites. Stankoven, he's still a rookie, plus 450. Celebrini, plus 500. Cutter Goche, plus 550. Interesting names. There's Rutger, plus 2,500 for the Art Trophy. I think that's it. 3 o'clock, winding it down. Hope everyone had a good time this afternoon. I don't know. I was feeling better about this show than yesterday's. I always get pretty nervous hosting. Hustler does such a great job. He will be back next week. He'll be joining me off the top. I think he'll be joining me for a bit tomorrow. He's enjoying the President's Cup. So, hey, if you did enjoy the show, hit the thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel. Again, doing all those things tells YouTube we're putting out some good content here. And because we depend on the algorithm so much, and may be more likely to show it to people who are interested. I know Darren Bombing, I thought he's got the Bonfire Sports coming up here. He's starting at 3:05 scheduled for. So for more Bombers discussion, head over to Darren. But we'll be getting set tomorrow for the Jets Wild game in Minnesota. We'll see what the Jets lines are. We don't really know. We don't have total confirmation about what they're. We'll have the sheet, and we'll hear from Scott Arniel. We'll have those clips as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing everyone tomorrow on Winnipeg Sports Talk here on YouTube. That's it for me, Michael Remis. I'm saying bye-bye.
Oh, my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home! Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.